everyone, and welcome to Asifa-Hollywood presents Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous Q&A. My name is Aubrey Mintz. I'm the director of the School of Art at Cal State Long Beach and a board member at Asifa-Hollywood, and I'm honored to moderate this panel today. And I just want to introduce our incredibly impressive panel of artists and creators that are bringing you the next installment of Jurassic Park lore. And thank everyone on this panel for their time, for being here, especially at such a strange time, and to the audience being with us during this strange pandemic time. And hope everyone is safe and getting through it okay. So anyway, we have some wonderful things to celebrate today. Camp Cretaceous. I'm going to introduce the panel on my screen in order, but I don't know how it is on everyone else's screen. So panelists, as you hear your name, if you would wave furiously so people know who I'm talking about here. So please welcome Emmy-nominated executive producer Scott Kramer, who is a co-executive producer and story editor of Cleopatra in Space, executive producer and story editor of Pinky Malinky, and co-executive producer of Kung Fu Panda Legends of Awesomeness. Yeah. Also, please welcome the Emmy-nominated executive producer Aaron Hammersley. He was also storyboard artist and revisionist on Danny Phantom and Fairly Odd Parents, supervising producer and director of Star vs. the Forces of Evil, and director on Kung Fu Panda Legends of Awesomeness. And please welcome CG animation director Dan Godinez.
Very nice.
He was CG animation director on Kung Fu Panda: The Paws of Destiny, and animation supervisor for Kung Fu Panda: Legends of Awesomeness and The Adventures of Puss in Boots. Please also welcome art director Christophe Vacher.
Hello.
Christophe was also supervising color designer and visual effects art director on Transformers Prime, and background artist on Beauty and the Beast, Fantasia 2000, Hercules, Hunchback of Notre Dame, and Tarzan. And finally, please welcome art director JP Balmet.
Hello.
JP was also concept designer for Star Wars Rebels, Star Wars Resistance, and Star Wars The Clone Wars. Concept artist at Wizards of the Coast, working on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Welcome all of you. Thank you so much for being here. And for our wonderful audience, you can send Q&A questions in the chat box provided, and I will read them out as we are able to get to them. So the first question I have is kind of round robin for everyone. It's kind of a general question, but it has a two-parter. So sorry, it's one of those long ones. So first of all, like, how fun was it to rewatch this and research the Jurassic Park series? Was there anything you were watching that you collectively listed as like a must-have in this series? Like, I think about like the iconic shaking puddle of water as a T-Rex goes by, or perhaps for Christophe and JP, it was something in the design, lighting, or the foliage, cinematography. And part B, was it a challenge to layer your own creativity into the new stories you were trying to tell to set its own path?
Wow. Well, I mean, for me, getting to go, yeah, it was a great time. I mean, it was wonderful to get to go back, especially to the first film and just watching them all. I think really tone was the thing that we were really shooting for to establish right away. You know, sometimes in kids animation, it can be very paced up and a little bit frenetic. And we really, from the get-go, really wanted to just be able to sit in those moments, those silences. Yeah, for me, that was really fun. Come on, somebody else. I've done so many of these, please.
I think we screened the movies, you know, pretty early on, right? And we like pored over those things to find little nuggets of things that we could do, right? Is that right, Scott?
Absolutely. You know, just, you know, early on with tone and really seeing, as Dan will say, how these dinosaurs move and everything. And then just in establishing this series, the writer's room, we poured over Jurassic World time and time and time again, just trying to get everything lined up the best we could.
Yeah, I think the main thing, the hardest part was trying to find the right balance between what we were doing and the actual movies that were very realistic, and what we were doing was more stylized, but it was more realistic than anything that had been done before, at least at DreamWorks. And I think that was the hardest part to go around, both in the building part and designing part, which is more JP's side, but also in the lighting part and the colors and everything, and the drama, how much drama we were supposed to infuse in there compared to the movies, and since it was a kids show, of course. So how much dramatic lighting, how much darkness also did we want in there compared to the movies, because obviously the movies are more for adults. But it was really fun for me, definitely trying to find exactly those marks.
Steven Spielberg came by and we showed him the show, and we were showing him things like real world touches, like characters have dirt, and they're impacted by the environment like a character would in a movie. And he was excited about those things. And then as we were talking to him more, he started getting kind of almost directorial, where he's like, could we throw a rim light behind that character or something? Could we do that? And Christophe was right there with me, and we're like, yeah, we can light it cinematically. And the pairing of paying attention to those little details, like somebody got dirt on them or scuffed up, or they change as it goes along and they kind of encounter things. Also finding out how much we could interact with the environment, you want to see things coming out of the grass or going into the forest. Like the forest and the jungle is like a character in and of itself, because these kids are running away all the time, and they have to have a sense of mystery where they're disappearing in and out of that. And like Christophe was saying, when we first started, the forest was the jungle was such an issue of can we pull this off, and we had to do studies to try to get trees to look right, and we had to do studies to try to get the dirt and all this to interact in a way that didn't feel like that classic CG thing where you stick it in there and it doesn't feel integrated. So we spent a lot of time working on that, trying to make it blend as much as possible, but also keeping in mind that we still have a TV budget, so we don't get all that sweet stuff that like a feature would get, So we're always trying to creative problem solve what the biggest bang for the buck is, and what's important. So there's a story that Scott and Aaron are trying to tell, and we want to tell it as best as possible, and not get hung up on little things that we don't necessarily need, but we really just want to sell that as much as possible visually.
Yeah, and I think we really wanted to stay true to the original films and the new films that recently came out, and take elements from those films, but also tell the story of our campers and how they go and they experience this camp themselves, and how would they react to the situations that they are put in as the events unfold. So it was a lot of fun. It would have been fun to do a little more research. I think Scott and I went to Universal Studios and rode the ride about 10 times and called that research. So
Yeah,
that was fun.
Research.
Aaron, did you want to add anything to the development of the question?
you're muted.
You're on
buddy.
mute.
Oops.
Sorry, I have to mute myself because I have a big family and a dog who likes to chime in on just about every Zoom meeting I have. So
Someone told me the other day the catchphrase of 2020 is "You're muted."
yeah. Yeah. I think the thing that, like Scott was saying, that the tone was a big thing, and for me specifically, the feeling of wonder that was created in the original film, especially, but also carried through all of the other films. But that sense of wonder, I think, is the thing that I was the most excited for, is trying to find opportunities to inject that into the series as often as possible. So, you know, like case in point, the first episode, like the kids ziplining over this, you know, these dinosaurs, and that moment, I think, you know, for me, that was a big one to like really showcase this as like, this is what this show can offer, is something that like any kid would love to experience. And then it, you know, in contrast, like the incredible danger that they find themselves in by the end of that episode. See, there's my dog who would like to join. So that was the big thing, you know, and I think the challenge, obviously, you know, we do work with Colin, and he, you know, there's always parameters given like what his plans are with what he wants to do with the canon of the show, or of the, you know, of Jurassic World. So I think, you know, we're always going to have to be aware of all of those sort of parameters. But I think that we've all gotten used to those sort of parameters, especially you know, Scott and I and Dan, having come from like Kung Fu Panda, Legends of Awesomeness, we're very aware of like how this, you know, these sort of stories have to like support the films, you know, and can't contradict the canon of a series, and just like finding little pockets of like, okay, this is an area that we can mine stories from. So,
you know, Scott, you kind of touched on this a little bit, going into kind of the darkness of the original shows, and kind of balancing a line between what's, you know, okay for kids, but also not wanting to shy away from that as well. And I read somewhere that Spielberg was like, it's not a kiddie show, just keep going with it. How did you find that balance there?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was definitely a team effort, because you know, Spielberg did say that he didn't want to do, you know, a whitewash version like, you know, we've done. I've never been a part of a kids animation show where like, yeah, there's fatalities. Like there's usually, you know, spent a long time doing this, and you have to have someone fall off a cliff, and then you hear them say, "Oh, I'm okay," you know, or something like that. So we didn't want to shy away from that, but yet we still wanted to have, you know, fun. You know, it at its heart, it really all comes down for me. It comes down to our characters. And, you know, when I first got the job, it was like, you know, if we're going to hook an audience in for a number of episodes, there's going to be dinosaurs, yes, and there's going to be spectacle and all this stuff. But we need kids that we're going to root for, and that work together, and just there's a good conflict, but interaction and fun. And yeah, I don't know the real answer. It's just that it was a big team effort in finding the fun, not going too dark. And so a lot of the time it was trial and error. You know, we ended up going back and re-recording some of the screams from the beginning episodes, because there's a difference between a cartoon scream, a TV cartoon scream, and a Jurassic Park, Jurassic World scream. So it's a hard balancing act of fun, and it's been trial and error, and sometimes we went too far, and people told us, you know, it's camp, at least to start, and so we want there to be that wonder, that awe, that fun side of it before things, you know, turn dark.
You know, I was thinking about this. We've also, on the other side of it, is like, you know, we all worked on animated shows that are a lot more cartoony than this, and obviously, you know, you have a lot of storyboard artists and people that come from this world, so the tendency usually is to go pretty cartoony with things, with how people react to moments, or you know, like it's sort of in our wiring at this point to have characters sort of overreact, or, you know, because we're trying to emphasize their emotions or a story point. But in this, it was really the key. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I've used the word subtle. You know, like, I'm constantly saying, let's make this subtle. It's all in the nuance of this storytelling. And as well as in the writing, you know, there were a lot of times, especially, you know, like those first few episodes where we're going, does this joke belong in a show like this? Should we rewrite this or just remove that joke for this moment, so that we don't sort of offset the horror elements of the Jurassic Park franchise too much, you know? So it really was a fine balance of finding, like, well, what belongs in this world? What's the tone that we're setting here? So it was a lot of, trial by error in that.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, it's like, you do want it not to get too dark. You do want to lighten it up. But earlier, you know, when you have a kid running from a dinosaur, you know, like Aaron said, early episodes when we started, I think, you know, there'd be a little quippy dialogue or something like that to try to lighten the mood. But in this grounded story we're telling, it just felt like, oh, well, that completely undercuts the danger. But yeah, subtle is a great word, whether it's, you know, like with Christophe and JP, whether it's color choice or design or eyes. And one of the highlights of the show is really the subtle acting, I think, that Dan is providing with not only the kids, but the dinosaurs. You know, there's a sense of reality, which I think really, it's invaluable, really, to what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I was going to throw that over to Dan next, in terms of how you balance the subtlety versus exaggerated performance in the animation.
Well, it's been a challenge, to be honest with you, because you can easily get carried away and put in too many poses or get too broad with the acting. But we've really been trying really hard, as Aaron said, to play the acting a little more subtle when we need to. If we need a moment where the character just needs to be held in a pose and just let it breathe and emote, so it's clear to the audience what this character is thinking and what they're feeling. You know, it's okay to do that. It's okay to hold the character and just focus on the eyes and sell this fear or the tension of the moment. And then there's moments where you're being chased by a T-Rex or by raptors, and it's okay to get a little more exaggerated and stretch the characters and really push the mechanics. So it's been a balance working on this.
A question just came in from the audience. I guess this can go to anyone. I'm going to throw in another part of the question. Sorry, it's a two-parter again. The first question is, as you developed the main characters, how did you come up with the archetypes, and were there characters that didn't make the cut? And the second part of the question is, you know, I hate to even ask this in 2020, but it's important that we mention the lead character is a Black character, and Darius, was that always in the original plan, and what type of discussion led to that decision?
Yeah, well, you know, the characters as they originally were predate any of us. You know, this was a project that originated with Zach Stentz, who wrote Thor and X-Men First Class. So Darius was always an African-American lead. There was always a diverse cast. And again, you know, this is going back, you know, it takes a long time. This goes back 3 years to really get into it. Some of the ethnicities changed between the different characters as we were developing it. I can't think of anyone who didn't make the cut, but it was just lots of conversation. You know, you want to start something like this with, especially for a kid show. Yes, we did start with archetypes, you know, as far as your dino nerd, your rich kid, your jock, you know, the social media girl. But, you know, just through lots and lots of conversation in the writer's room, we just landed on what we wanted to subvert those archetypes as we moved on. We really wanted to approach it from a way of where it's like the first day of school at a new school where nobody is really presenting themselves as who they actually are and more of who they want to be seen as. And so we really tried to explore that and try to subvert some of the expectations of that. As far as Darius being as being African American, you know, I don't have a good, like, it wasn't where there was no political statement anyone's trying to make. It's just throughout, like all our characters, diversity, inclusion it's what you strive for. You know, when I was little, it's like, well, it's great. There's plenty of little white boys in cartoons. And now, you know, we really are efforting so every kid can see themselves or a version of themselves or someone they can identify with and feel good about that and have things to admire about these characters. So, you know, I'd say that's the overall reasoning behind why these characters are who they are.
Thank you. This is more of an art direction question. The lighting is just so phenomenal and the attention to detail there. But, you know, I hear JP talk about, you know, still with a TV budget. How did you achieve that, I guess? Is it just putting in more hours or just making smarter choices and choosing to focus certain elements to stand out?
Do you mind if I start, Christophe, and then we can hit lighting after? Okay. So when I came on, I was coming on at the pre-build stage. So they had been greenlit and the show was going to go into production, but we hadn't quite gotten there yet. And so there were conversations about how do we proceed and how do we make the show from the concept art. Now we're going into making the actual show. And, you know, I felt comfortable because I had just rolled off of the new Clone Wars series up at Lucasfilm, and we were doing big 3D environments with, you know, foliage and forest and stuff like that. But this was thrilling to me because the visual target was even beyond what we were going for up there, where like the grass and the trees and that was a lush environment. And on that, like you were saying, on that TV budget, the target that we were shooting for was something I had not seen ever for TV. And so when we got into the nitty gritty about it with the asset team at DreamWorks and the partner studio that we were working with, that partner studio I was familiar with. And so I kind of knew their limitations and what they're good at. And then within DreamWorks, they were saying, you know what, we can actually push this even further. So, you know, there was a little trial and error, like with the story, but we were, you know, trying more drawing centric stuff. And I brought with me some of the 3D side of things from the Clone Wars shows that we'd worked on. And so we started building things in 3D because it's, you know, it's a 3D show and we wanted it to feel grounded. So we were immediately blocking in things in 3D, getting a sense of scale. Like for the camp, we brought Scott in and, you know, we said, hey, does this feel right to you? And it actually didn't feel right. And, you know, we can nail that right immediately. Say, hey, this tree is way too big or this tree is too small, or, you know, it'd be great if this was hidden around the corner a little more, or things like that. And that enabled us to make a space that felt more real, I think. And then when we got a little further along, Christophe and I always ran into the issue of it's that little stuff that makes it feel real or not, like grass transitioning into dirt. It seems simple, but that always kills, like, it's really hard to do for some reason because of the systems that we have. But really paying attention to those things where water meets the ground, you know, hairlines on characters, things like that. It just, those little things, if you see them and they're wrong, it feels like a budget show. If you see them and they're right, then it feels like, whoa, how did you do that on this budget? You know, and so it's just trying to get everybody to pay attention to those little things. Christophe, you're talking about lighting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to piggyback on what you were just saying, attention to detail to me is way more important than than other things that seem, you know, more important, because eventually attention to detail is just adding that little extra mile that doesn't necessarily cost much more, or sometimes not at all, that it's based on observation. Nature, you know, observation of nature is like basically you add those little extra things that don't seem to be much, but then when they're there, you realize, oh my gosh, it makes a world of difference. And same with lighting, basically, you know, it's like all based on how lighting works in the real world, and then adding extra things like, you know, atmosphere, rays of light where they're needed, to give, you know, that sense of depth that we needed in the background and in the scenes. And all this adds up to a much more realistic environment. But you have to know where the line is between cartoony and realistic, and that's really what we try to do there. Like really try to push that towards a more realistic environment, a feeling. Like you will have more saturated colors, for instance, in a more cartoony show, and in a more realistic show, you'll have more desaturated, more muted colors. So it's all a matter of like observing what the real world gives you and trying to translate that into a show. It's not necessarily, you know, it doesn't cost more money. It doesn't take more time. It's just a matter of like pinpointing what you need to put there.
I will say there were some sets that were massive though, and they did take a lot of time and a lot of effort. And like the camp was insane. The camp was totally insane. It was a huge set, one of the bigger sets I've ever worked on, and planning it all and partnering with the hub team that we have at DreamWorks, which is our asset team. Problem solving. So collaboration was so essential between departments, and them telling us what we could get away with, us pushing that a little bit and saying, well, what if you did this? And then we're kind of bargaining with each other and trying to discuss, like, you know, we're doing something new. So what we've done in the past and what has been normal in the past, like, can we try something new? Can we try this? And, you know, maybe there were a few little tiny growing pains, but once we started to trust each other really well, I think that we started to do some really incredible stuff. And that term that Christophe was talking, attention to detail, like when we first started, I think they threw around the term realism for animated TV. And we were like, what is realism for animated TV? No one could pinpoint it. But I think eventually we landed on something close.
Yeah, and just since we're talking about lighting, you know, early on, this great, brilliant man named Brandon Young helped, he came in and kind of set sort of what we were going for, this theatrical look, you know, not realism for animated TV. And then Kathy Tran, who we were hoping could be here, but she's off celebrating her birthday, our CG lighting and comp director. You want to talk about attention to detail and the job that she and her team do. And when you want to talk about tone and mood and just the effects, it's yeah, we're very lucky. We got a heck of a crew.
Well, I think we all have to say happy birthday to Kathy Tran then.
Happy birthday, Kathy.
Happy birthday, Kathy.
Another question from the audience. Were there any characters from the original films, like any tie-ins that you thought of or backstories that you included that we might not know right away? Or
well, there's some. There was talks of others that I don't think I'm at liberty to talk about. But yeah, there is some crossover from the films that on Friday when people watch, they'll get to see. So yeah, we did our best. It was like the writing staff and the crew is basically, before we got on the show, I think is a lot of big fans of the Jurassic World and the film. So we try to do as many nods, whether it be in the writing or in the visuals, that made sense. You don't want it to feel like, hey, look at this, look at this. But we did definitely want to keep within the canon. We wanted to do our part to support and bring new viewers in and be a part of this thing.
I think I've got about 2 more questions. This one can only be asked by a paleontologist, and a good friend of mine, Stuart Samita, is asking it. And he wants to know what dinosaurs did not make the cut.
Well, you know, we're limited in what we can do. So I can say if we had a similar, like we had brachiosauruses, so we didn't have apatosauruses. We had Sinoceratops, so then we traded that out for also having Triceratops, which I'm sorry to all the Triceratops fans out there, which I know there are legion. But yeah, if you had a type, then we just sort of, so those are two that come up the top of my head of dinosaurs that didn't make the cut.
Important question.
Big shout out to Stuart. Stuart helped out on the show quite a bit.
Absolutely.
So, hey, Stuart, thanks for all your help on the show. He was really, really key on helping the animation team and the board team with how these dinosaurs should move and behave. So, shout out to Stuart.
I have a great story about Stuart and his wife bringing chimpanzees to the school that I taught at one time, but that's for another panel. Okay, so the last question I think I'll wrap with is, you know, we're about 4 days to the first episode premiere. How are you all feeling about the show, and did the pandemic itself have an effect, or how did it have an effect on the production or the outcome?
Well, I'm excited. You know, we've been working on this for a long time. I'm very proud of the work that this team has put in. It's a big responsibility, one that I don't think anybody on the crew really took lightly. We're really, you know, I'm excited for people to see it, and like I said, and hopefully they enjoy it. As far as pandemic, again, there was definitely, once we went to work from home, there was definitely, you know, a learning curve with that. It didn't make things easier. But again, a testament to the crew. It's really, after a few weeks, we kind of hit a groove. It was already a really hard show. But we kind of got to where, you know, we pushed a few deadlines here and there, but overall we just kind of kept pushing through. You know, the hardest part for me is like, I like going down to someone's office, having a 10-minute conversation with Kathy or Dan or JP or Christophe or Aaron, and like, you're done. And then it became like, you know, 17 back and forth emails, or, okay, well, let's organize a Zoom call and all of that stuff. So things take longer. I miss being around everybody. You know, it's animation more than it's a team, and so I miss being around the team. But we've done what we can to kind of keep in touch. You know, whether it's just meeting with different departments over Zoom, or, you know, production through Dan, a surprise baby shower way back when we put a meeting on. They put a meeting on the board, and then Dan showed up, and we were all wearing baby bibs. So. It's nice. It's nice when we can come together, and I wish we were all together for the premiere. But you know, this is what we got, and we're all very happy and grateful that we're do jobs where we've been able to work through this. So yeah, I think I'm just feeling grateful and excited for people to see it, and yeah, I'm proud of the work this team has done.
I will say, I think, you know, the interesting part about sort of what happened, you know, we were definitely like, you know, right in the middle of production, when all of a sudden we all had a meeting, and Peter McCown, our line producer, calls us all in and says, all right, everybody's got to work from home. And it was just like that all of a sudden our whole production life changed, and it was, I think we were all a little concerned how that was going to work.
Yeah.
Because there was just, you know, we all relied so heavily on the, you know, our home computers, our server, our everything, you know, being at the studio. But it took really, it didn't take that long. It took like a few weeks, and all of a sudden we were kind of all not firing on all cylinders, but fairly close. And it was really impressive, actually. And I think I've found one funny element to it is that like it's actually like it's humanized everybody in a different way for me, because you see people in their home environment and they're like spouses walking by in the background, or dogs barking, kids running up in the middle of meetings, and no one ever takes those things as like, you know, as frustrating, and we all understand that we're all in the same exact place. But it's actually been really nice to go, oh, this is where this person lives. This is their office. That's their daughter, you know, and it all of a sudden, in some weird way, I think it actually bound us together a little bit more than we would have had we just only seen each other in the office environment.
That's wonderful. I just want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to spend a half hour, 45 minutes with us, answer the audience questions. And I want to tell everyone that season 1 of the Netflix animated series, Jurassic World, Camp Cretaceous, will premiere on September 18th, 2020. Go check it out. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you, Aubrey.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.